Hi everyone. Today I'm going to give you a tour of our project ARES-Vidura, which is our AI-powered platform for carbon nanotube, which is the CNT research. In under a couple of minutes, you will see how we pull in the latest literature, predict the growth rates, and keep improving with real-world feedback smoothly without any big gaps in our workflow. This project has been funded by the ERTC, which is the Engineering Research and Development Center. And as you can see here, this is our acknowledgement as a token of thanks to them. The name of our project is Closed Loop CNT Growth using Retrieval Augmented Generation and Human Feedback. And the people who have worked on this project are Upasana Roy, Vani Sheikh, Mehdi Hassan Rehan, Ashish Pandey, Mauro Lemus Alarcon, Andrew Hellman, Matthew Marshman, and Dr. Prasad Kalyam. All of them are under the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from University of Missouri, Columbia. Let's begin. Here I will walk you through the demonstration outline. What are we going to talk about? The first thing would be the introduction and motivation of this project. The next thing would be the ARES-Vidura architecture. The next thing would be the RAG-powered literature lookup for the novice and expert question and answers. Then the next one is a regression model prediction. Then we move on to the integration of human feedback. And then we end with conclusions and future work. The introduction and motivation. Just to give you a brief overview, the synthesis of these carbon nanotubes involve very complex, manual, and iterative experimental processes. High variability in the inputs make it more challenging to consistently obtain the desired material properties. Now what about this closed loop concept? For this closed loop concept, we are bringing in an integration of AI, simulation tools, and human expertise to streamline the CNT research. And the importance of our work lies with accelerating the material discovery and optimizing the experimental workflows for both novice and experienced researchers. Next, we move to the ARES-Vidura system architecture. As you can see here, we have like three big components in our system architecture. The first one is a RAG model, which composes of two different kinds of knowledge base. The first one is a CNT literature repository. The second one is an experimental knowledge base. By that, I mean that this one, the CNT literature repository, contains all the research papers that has been used in MU, which is University of Missouri, to conduct experiments on the growth of carbon nanotubes. And then the next one is an experimental knowledge base, which contains the records of the previous experiments in the University of Missouri, which has been done in the past. We are going to use these two different kinds of knowledge bases for our RAG model. Then the second component of our architecture is the regression model. Over here, what we are doing is we are using not only this experimental knowledge base, meaning the past experimental records, but we are also keeping into consideration the simulated experiments which we have generated to suffice for the lack of real data. Now, coupling both the simulated and the real experiments, we are using an ML agent to predict the parameters, especially the growth rate of the carbon nanotube, to guide a researcher for performing an experiment. And then at last, which is the third component, we have a human feedback to annotate the results and feed it back to your experimental knowledge base, which is apparently this one, so that down the line, we can rely more on this chatbot and we can rely less on the human intervention. Next, we move on to a RAG-powered literature lookup for novice and expert Q&A. Now I'm going to test this question for a novice user on our system and we'll give you a live demonstration of the answers. The first question for a novice user is, what are the primary differences between single-walled, which is SWCNTs, and multi-walled carbon nanotubes, which is MWCNTs? So let's see, what answer do we have? So here, as you can see that I have mentioned this question, like what are the primary differences between the single-walled and the multi-walled carbon nanotubes? So you can see like this is the answer which I have got. And I would just like to give you a brief overview of what it is just, telling. So the single-walled nanotubes and multi-walled nanotubes are like the two types of carbon nanotubes with distinct differences. And here you can see a couple of differences which has been mentioned, including the electronic properties and also some more information on how they can be used, like SWCNTs tend to self-assemble into more complex structures than the multi-walled CNTs, which can be useful in application like drug delivery and catalysis. However, it's also mentioning a difference that these multi-walled CNTs can be more challenging to integrate into polymer, ceramic, and metal matrix composites due to their larger size and higher reactivity. And then finally, our RAG model summarizes this whole chunk of answer into 2-3 sentences for a novice user to get a hang of what is happening over here and not get too much confused. Next, we move on to the question for an expert user. So, what are the advantages of using CVD for CNT synthesis? So now I would break down the term CVD for you. So by CVD, we mean carbon vapor deposition. So this is a process which is used for growing the carbon nanotubes. And now we are going to ask this question to our chatbot, which is considered as an expert level question, because for being an expert, you need to know at first what is a CNT and how, to grow them. And then you can think about weighing down some different methods. Let's say, for example, this CVD process, and then you can ask this chatbot that, okay, can you tell me what are the advantages of using this process if I use for growing the carbon nanotubes? So let's see, what answer do we have? So here I have typed this question, what are the advantages of using CVD for the CNT synthesis? So now if you can see here, the answer is pretty much well structured, like it just avoids jargons and it clearly focuses by highlighting the points, by starting the structure, like firstly, it allows for precise control. Secondly, CVD produces high yield and high purity CNTs. Thirdly, CVD can be used to synthesize a wide range of CNTs with different properties, such as single-walled, multi-walled, and functional carbon nanotubes. Fourthly, CVD can be scaled up to for large-scale production, making it a promising method for industrial scale CNT production. And lastly, we can see here the potential for economic viability is also an advantage of CVD for the CNT synthesis. So now, if you can see here, like the answer is pretty much well structured by guiding the expert to the point and not letting that person divert a lot. And then finally, we can see that all this like 5 points has been summarized for the user so that he or she can understand it really simple and can have a hang of, okay, what are the points which I have learned? So as you can see here in the summary, it is telling the advantages of using CVD includes control over structure, high yield and purity, versatility, scalability, and potential for economic viability. These advantages make CVD a promising method for large-scale CNT production with desired properties. Next, we move on to the regression model prediction. So let's try by asking this question to the chatbot. And let me tell you, this is a use case which has not been tried before in the lab. So before trying out this experiment in real, we are going to ask this chatbot to get an idea of, what results I can expect after doing 3 hours of an experiment. So let's find out. So what is the growth rate for temperature 800 degrees centigrade and thickness 1.27 nanometer? So here, if you see that when I ask this question, you can see that there is a bunch of answer and it tells you for the last 5 seconds, what would be the growth rate? So you can see here for timestamp 1196, which is 22.51, 1197, which is 21.09, 1198, which is 21.31, 1199, which is 22.29, and at the last, it is 22.12. So imagine doing this experiment in real and getting to know these answers right after 3 hours. So in a way, this chatbot is giving you an idea of what to expect without spending that whole chunk of time. So now the expert researcher, based on his previous knowledge and expertise, can decide, well, based on these results, does this look reasonable to me? And if yes, then I will go ahead and do this experiment and actually grow the CNTs. And then whatever his real experimental results are, he or she can easily compare that with the results of the chatbot and use his or her human feedback to put it back, in our experimental knowledge base. So exactly that's what is the third part of our work deals with, the incorporation of a human feedback. So let's go with the integration of human feedback. So over here, the integration of the human feedback, let's go over a couple of points. So what is the role of the expert input? So human feedback is incorporated to validate and refine the predictions made by the ML agents. This feedback mechanism enables the researchers to label their experimental outcomes as success or failure, which is then fed back into the system. And the benefit of this is that it enhances the accuracy of the knowledge base and continuously improves model predictions over time. So as of now, we are still working on incorporating this feedback to our system, but this is what we actually have right in our work, and we would soon be coming up with incorporating this into our web portal. So now, to give you the final conclusion and some future work, so just to summarize our whole work, ARES-Vidura represents a significant step towards automating the CNT growth experiments by combining advanced AI techniques with human expertise. The future work is to incorporate more experimental data to further refine the system, explore the implementation of a mixture of experts, which is the MOE, for dynamic model selection. And the third one is to develop a user-friendly web portal to enhance accessibility for the broader research community. And finally, as a closing remark, I would like to say that the integration of this closed-loop mechanisms in material science research has the potential to revolutionize experimental methodologies and accelerate discovery. Thank you.